let's look at some of the neuron pools in the mesencephalon that impact the rest of the body. This tells us why we could have symptoms arising from some organ, for example, maybe the thymus or maybe the large intestine, that was affecting the mesencephalon on one side, and then it could be affecting problems that are systemic in nature you would never think was coming from a specific organ, because it impacts the mesencephalon. Look at all the things the mesencephalon does and the types of symptoms it can create as we go through this mess here. The mesencephalon is like a busy hub airport. It's like maybe Atlanta. And if you have a hurricane hitting this part of the country, heaven forbid, it's going to change all the flights into Atlanta. And then that's going to change all the flights out of Atlanta, because the planes that were supposed to go maybe from Miami or Tampa to Atlanta and then go on to Chicago or Detroit or Minnesota, the northbound flights, they're not going to go on to the northern parts. Or if you got a snowstorm in the Midwest, those flights that are going to come from Minnesota or Illinois or Detroit area, they're going to impact the flights, and the people trying to get through Atlanta and get to Florida, they're not going to get it. So whether you're going north to south or south to north, there's a problem in that hub airport. There's going to be a problem on all sides of it, north, south, east, west. Same thing with the mesencephalon. You got a problem with something coming into the mesencephalon, there's going to be a problem with something going out of the mesencephalon. It's like a hub airport. And so let's talk about the autonomic effects. Well, the mesencephalon has autonomic effects. So some of the symptoms arising from these factors that are affecting the mesencephalon, which we will see by changes in TMJ function. Some of these factors could be autonomic. There's the parasympathetic activity in the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which relates to pupillary constriction and pupil accommodation to near sight. So you get pupil constriction to light, and you get pupil constriction and accommodation of the lens when you bring far to near, and this has effects on vision. There's also a pathway that's starting the top of the intermediate lateral cell column in the mesencephalon, which sends down bilateral sympathetic effects, descending bilateral sympathetic effects. So you've got local parasympathetic as well as descending sympathetic effects, which could arise in the mesencephalon. So you have a heart rate problem, heart rhythm problem coming from the mesencephalon. And yes, it oftentimes happens that way. The mesencephalon has autonomic effects, so when problems exist on the right mesencephalon, we'll see a problem with the ileocecal valve on the right, and problem exists in the left mesencephalon, we'll see a problem in the Houston valves on the left. The mesencephalon reticular formation areas have areas for pre-programmed movements. These are areas which have pattern generator cells in them. And when the pattern generator cells are neat, because when you fire a pattern generator neuron or a group of neurons, you get a whole activity throughout the body. You don't have to fire each neuron individually for a movement. And these pattern generators in the mesencephalon reticular formation are in an area called the parabrachial nucleus. And that's near the brachium conjunctivum, which is a superior pathway from the cerebellum into the brainstem, comes in the mesencephalon. So it's near there, so it's called the parabrachial nucleus. This parabrachial nucleus has pattern generator cells, so that when you fire them, you get, in animals, they get rotation of the head around the body, around the midline. You get whole patterns of activity. Or you get raising of the head and body, like flexion extension patterns. Whole patterns of activity like this from these pattern generators. Or you get turning of the entire body, which is, what's that? That's like gait. Turning the entire body back and forth like gait. So you can have problems with what we call centering the spine patterns, flexion extension, lateral flexion, and gait torque, generating from the cells on one side of the mesencephalon that are overfiring, creating that pattern. Or underfiring, creating a pattern, either overfiring or underfiring, creating a pattern. So you could have spinal problems. Your chiropractor, you have spinal problems which are being generated from the mesencephalon, and you'll find some kind of TMJ indicator of that coming from somewhere else in the body. So you can find out what flights are not coming into the airport and figure out how to stimulate those flights coming into the airport so they go out the other side and change the whole spinal function. This is hugely important for chiropractors to understand, because they're sometimes treating the spine when they should be treating the brain to affect the spine.